All right, last night we had the battle of the 1 and the 2 seed. Actually, it wasn't the 1 and the 2. They were tied for first. They were tied. The number 1 seed was on the line last night. But one team showed up, the other didn't. Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio. I definitely want to hear his thoughts on what that game, what did we learn from that game, and what that means for the league. That, Mitch, the Nets decided that, you know what, Philly, if you want home court advantage in the playoffs, you go ahead and take it. What's the message there?
It's a bad message. The Nets have wasted a perfectly good regular season. Well, it's not perfectly good. It's a flawed regular season, as we know. It's getting to be a war of attrition with all these crazy injuries. So there's a problem there for the league. But the Nets are like the Clippers last year. Remember, the Clippers went into the playoffs. They had played maybe 10, 12 games with everybody together, their top 7 or 8 players. I don't know if you remember that. And then they actually, and then what happened? When things got really tough in the playoffs, and they had to kind of count on each other, they had nothing to fall back on in terms of a regular season experience. That's why it's so important. That's why the regular season, although everybody just basically says regular season doesn't care, who cares about it? That's where you work out things that's going to help you in the playoffs get through hard times. I remember talking to, when the Warriors were winning titles a few years ago, talking to Andre Iguodala, and he was like, you learn so much on your way to a title that you learn, first of all, what you can't get away with in the future, how you can't cut corners, but you also have the knowledge of, all right, this is what's going to get us through in tight spots in the playoffs. When you're under duress, when there's a lot of problems that you have to figure out on the court, you guys figure them out during the regular season. You don't all of a sudden show up to the playoffs and say, we're going to start figuring things out. So the Clippers didn't do that last year. Now the Nets this year, can they figure them out any better? Well, it's a differently constructed team. But the problem is that you've got a guy like Kevin Durant who's in and out of the lineup. You can't count on him because of his health, because of these leg injuries he's had. We know that Harden's bombed in the playoffs before, and Kyrie Irving, who the heck knows where his head's going to be in the playoffs. So it looks like right now, everybody says, well, the Nets have more than Philly. That might be. I got to give the edge to Philly just in terms of, I think they've been together a little bit longer now. If they meet, Mike, obviously it's going to be the conference final, so the Nets will have figured out 2 rounds, including, let's say, beating Milwaukee if it's a 2-3 situation. But I can't tell you right now that I'm definitely thinking the Nets are going to beat the Sixers.
Right. Well, and I guess you watch that game last night and you wonder, all right, did we learn anything? Did we get something from that game? Joel Embiid has almost 40 points. I mean, did we say, hey, I don't care that you didn't have Durant and Harden, you can't stop Embiid?
They probably can't stop Embiid because DeAndre Jordan's not the answer. They came up short for Andre Drummond. They don't have the size to stop Embiid. So they probably can't stop Embiid, who, by the way, has missed. He's only played about 66% of the Sixers games this year. He's out of the MVP discussion, right? Because he's not going to play enough games. So who knows what his Can you count on him in the playoffs? He's basically been unreliable, too, for the Sixers. As he and Ben Simmons, the one thing is he and Ben Simmons have never gotten past the second round, and usually they've bombed in the second round. So, it's like you got one team that hasn't been together that long. You got another team that, all right, these guys have been together, the main 2 guys, but what have they done?
Well,
so it's basically a jump ball.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, Mitch. They haven't got out of the second round, but a lot of guys, they lose. This is a different Joel Embiid. I've watched him every night. This is a different guy. You're right. We'll see. He's got to stay healthy, but he's definitely a different guy than we've seen. He's in much better shape. He's definitely in the fourth quarter been different, but is it their time? Like, do you watch that Sixer team and say, this is their time finally?
No. I'm not saying it's anybody's time. It's nobody's
Maybe
time.
not to win it, Maybe not to win the whole thing, but to get out of that second round, I guess I should say.
Better get out of the second round. What are you going up against in the Eastern Conference? Right now, who's the fourth-place team in the East that they would play in the second round? Philadelphia.
Right, it's Atlanta.
They can't beat Atlanta. They should maul Atlanta.
Right. No, Atlanta or Boston right now is in that 4-5.
If they're any good, they'll maul Atlanta in 4 games. If they go to 6 games with Atlanta, that's a problem. That is a big problem.
So then, would you agree, and I said this yesterday, I want to see if you agree, that the 1 seed is obviously more important to Philly than it is Brooklyn?
Yes, I probably think so, though. Everybody's assuming that, the Nets could go into Philadelphia and win a game How do we don't know anything about the Nets. They have no playoff. They have no resume. They have no record. It's a bunch of big-name players who are going to be, basically joining forces together for the first time really in the playoffs. I mean, this is not the way the NBA works traditionally. I mean, you got to have some sort of a track record. Even when LeBron went to Miami that first year, they had a lot of growing pains, but they were on the court together. He, Wade, Bosh, right? I mean, that's the way it works.
Well, and you remember that Heat
aren't
team.
even on the court to have any growing pains.
You remember that Heat team, too, Mitch. They put that team together. They didn't win their first season. It took them a season before they finally won.
And they lost to a team, Dallas. Jason Kidd was basically done. He was their second-best player. It was basically a one-man show with Nowitzki, and they couldn't take him out, and they had a 2-1 series lead. And LeBron imploded in fourth quarters of games 4, 5, 6 after they had a 2-1 lead, right? I mean, he couldn't get the job done. So, yeah, I mean, look, I don't know what the thing about the Nets is it's just a big mystery. And here's the other thing. Steve Nash, never been a coach, and he's never been a coach. He's never been a playoff coach. Now, Doc Rivers, he got fired last year because he blew that series along with the Clippers. That's the second time that Doc Rivers had blown a series when he was up 3-1. It's only been done 13 times in the history of the league. He's got 2 on his resume. Does he have more experience than Steve Nash? Steve Nash has as many playoff games as I have coaching. Come on.
Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio, who has 0 playoff games, coach, but he has covered a ton of NBA. Yes, 1 million playoff games and in regular season games. Does the NBA have a problem here with what happened last night, or is it just, hey, this is what it is, deal with it?
The NBA has a problem. I don't know if they have a problem with it. We all know there's a problem.
Oh, that's interesting.
We all know that the regular season has been totally devalued. And don't get me started on these ridiculous play-in games. That just makes the regular season even more doesn't mean anything. The league should have a big problem when you have a showdown and Kevin Durant doesn't play. Now I understand. They don't want to play him on the back end of the back-to-back in the Minnesota game because of the stuff going on out in Minneapolis, the life and death things going on in the world, Mike. They had to move that game, so all of a sudden it became a back-to-back. Now, we knew Durant wasn't going to play. Basically, he's not going to play. But the league should have any time. Look.
So why not play him? Why not sit him in that game? Why not sit him in that game?
That's a great call. I think because the Nets figured, you know what? We don't have Harden. Crazy Kyrie's home. We got to win this game to keep pace with Philadelphia. Let's take care of this one first. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not on the Zoom calls with Steve Nash. I'm not on the Zoom calls with anybody. Do you know the people on the Zoom calls with Kyrie Irving has still not asked him why he missed all those games about a couple of months ago? He's been out 2 different times this year because of, quote-unquote, personal family reasons. Nobody asked him a question about, what's going on.
I'll tell you, this
New York media at work.
This East is compelling. I mean, you got this Brooklyn team that's a mystery. You got this Philly team that it feels like people aren't buying into, but they have an MVP candidate. I know he hasn't played a lot of games, although if he plays the rest of the way, he would have played 50 games in a 72-game season. Would you not consider him for MVP if he played 50 of 72?
I don't know what the math is on that. It's more than 8 or 9 games that, to me, a guy's got to play basically 85, 90% of the games. Really, come on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess.
You can't. Now, there is a precedent. Bill Walton, back in an 82-game season 100 years ago in 77, he only played 59 games. He was the league MVP. Don't ask me why the voters, did it that way. But recently, more recent decades, it's been you got to play close to 82 games. Now, the problem now is who plays 82 games?
Right, and you got
82. Here's what 82 games is for people: a major inconvenience. Even though you're getting paid, it's a major inconvenience.
Well, everybody's giving Nikola Jokic the MVP, but that team, I mean, if you're looking at the standings, it's typically not. They're going to be a 4 seed.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Now, here's the thing you got to worry about with Jokic. First of all, are they going to improve any now that Jamal Murray is done, and that means their championship hopes are done? And I never really gave him. I thought they were long shots at best.
Agree.
But Murray's their best perimeter offensive player. Nobody else there can do what he does. I don't care if they sign Austin Rivers. I don't care if they sign Doc Rivers. He ain't going to get – you can't replace Jamal Murray on that team. Now, their record against teams with winning records is 16-11. Donovan Mitchell's got a better case. The Jazz's record is 23-9. They're 14 games over 500 against teams with winning records. And Chris Paul, if you want him for an MVP candidate, they're 12 games over 500, 19-7 against teams with winning records. And both those teams, and this is what I usually go by, you want to be an MVP? Let's get your team into the number two slot.
Yeah.
Number 1 or number 2 seeds. Now, back in 2016, 2017, we know Russell Westbrook, okay, was the MVP on a 6-seeded team. That was about, I think they were 47-35. But he got it because it was a historical season. He had done something. He had averaged a triple-double. Hadn't been done since Oscar Robertson. I mean, Nikola Jokic is having a great year. Don't get me wrong. He ain't doing anything historical, and his team's in fourth. And guess what? Who knows if they're going to be able to hold on to fourth. I'm not so sold on him. I know somebody's got to win the award.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, it's weird. By the way, Westbrook's averaging a triple-double again, and nobody even knows or nobody even cares. The weird part is the 1 seed, Brooklyn, doesn't have a candidate because no one's been on the court. You're going to give it to Donovan Mitchell. You're giving it to a Phoenix player. Embiid, by the way, my trusty producer says he has played, if he plays 50 of 72, that would be 70% of the games. It's equivalent of 57 of the 82.
Yeah, that ain't good enough for me.
Jeez.
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry. Hey. I mean, look, you want to be great, you got to be there every night, basically.
Yeah.
But you know what? You're talking to somebody who's. I mean, I used to fill out the bracket when it was, should I vote for Larry Bird or Magic Johnson?
Exactly.
Ago,
Different times, man. I can't look. LeBron, give him credit. When he's not injured, he plays every night. He rarely says, I'm just not playing tonight.
Before he went down with that injury, I thought he was the MVP, slightly over Embiid, and I thought it was going to be a two-man race. And I thought, you know what, this is going to be a tremendous finish because LeBron is in a drive for 5 to tie Michael Jordan on MVPs. Remember, LeBron won 4 in 5 years, and he hasn't been heard from since. Year after year, it's been Giannis, it's been Harden, it's been Westbrook. It's driving LeBron nuts because he just he doesn't feel like he gets the respect, which is totally ridiculous. But I thought that was going to be a two-man race. Now, he hasn't played enough games either.
No.
With this injury.
Nope.
So he's in the same boat as Embiid.
Speaking of,
I just hope that the guy who wins it, his team is in first or second place in their respective. Now I can't give it to Giannis. I mean, Giannis is, the thing is like I'm not.
He's hurt
down
too.
On Giannis, but here's the deal. Well, that's the thing too. He's missed 8 out of the last 13 games, and nobody knows. It's amazing. They asked Mike Budenholzer on one of them Zoom calls, "What's the time? Do you have a timetable for Giannis's return?" No, was the answer. How scary is that if you're a Bucks fan? If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, if you're Mike Budenholzer, who's basically your coaching career might be riding on this guy's coat. He's got to be healthy for you to go deep. Otherwise, you're probably going to get fired. That's a big problem. But the other thing about Giannis, there hasn't been a guy who's won 3 in a row since Larry Bird. Okay? 3 people have won 3 MVPs in a row. Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, Larry Bird. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm sorry, he's not on that level. Sorry.
They're the 3 seed currently. The Bucks, are we not talking enough about them?
I'm not buying them. I'm not buying them. Well, the big problem is Giannis and his knee. I mean, look, he comes back. It's going to get better with him playing on it. We don't really know what's wrong with it, except it's the same knee, I believe, that was messed up last year. Late in the year in March, he had a problem, remember? I think they were on the West Coast. And then in the bubble, it resurfaced, and he was a diminished Giannis Antetokounmpo. He had problems in the playoffs again when they imploded and they went backwards. They got knocked out in the second round and make it to the conference finals. So I'm assuming when he comes back, he will be diminished. He won't be 100%. And I'm not buying Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton coming to the rescue. They're just not good enough.
Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio. By the way, so you're saying you got to be first or second. That's Philly, Brooklyn, Utah,
usually.
Suns. That's it. That's all you got. Those are the 4.
Right.
So Embiid's got to win.
Well, I tell you what, you sound like his publicist. Did you grow up in Cameroon, too?
Well, I mean, come on. The Brooklyn Nets last night, and everybody, he had 30 at half last night.
Oh, I know. I watched the game. It was absolutely, there's some of these games where Embiid it's just bully ball, which is great to watch because if you remember the NBA and you remember sometimes it was bully ball back in the past when you had multiple guys like Embiid, roaming the courts, back in the day when centers meant something.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get tired of watching little guys just fling up 3-point shots.
Yep, I agree.
Well, somebody see. It's like remember what Shaq used to do to people, and it was all based on power. Shaq never went to people. I'd say to him, "Why don't you try a little jump hook?" He'd look at me. He goes, "I just want to slam it down people's throats.
Right.
I want to break the backboard." That's what you like about this guy.
We were talking about this in the first hour. Somebody asked me about Embiid or is Embiid on Shaq's level? And I was thinking to myself, how is Shaq playing in today's game?
Huh?
How is
Shaq would kill people today?
Right, but nobody plays like that. Nobody plays like that.
Nobody has. Well, I'd like to say, and I'm saying it, Embiid's power, but a lot of the stuff that Embiid did last night is, long distance shots and mid range shots. Shaq today would kill people if they want to get him the ball. They might tell Shaq, "We can't get you the ball because we need a 3-point shot."
Right.
But especially people think of Shaq as the old, overweight guy, didn't take care of himself. Go back on YouTube and watch his first few years in Atlanta. He was a gazelle.
Orlando.
He's running up and down the court. He's dunking on people. He's playing bully ball. It's all with power. And don't forget, that little move he had where he turned with his elbows up high and he knocked your teeth out of, which they basically outlawed with this dislodgement rule. That's how great Shaq was. You're a great player. Like in Wilt's case, they widened the lane. In Kareem's case, they changed the defensive, rules, illegal defensive rules for Kareem. And with Shaq, there was this dislodgement rule because he was basically sending everybody to get root canal work.
All right, Philly, Brooklyn, Bucks. Anybody else in the East? Miami went to the finals last year. Are they done? Boston?
Yeah, they're done. First of all, Victor Oladipo, he might not be back.
True.
That's a huge blow for them. They were depending on he'd be the number 2 guy to Jimmy Butler, but they've been a trend. You know what they are? They're a product of the bubble.
Yeah.
They're a product. They haven't done anything this year. They have really. I thought they'd be great this year. Nah, not even close. Boston, I can't count on Kemba Walker in a big spot. He has trouble getting a shot off. As you know, he's too small, and we saw that last year. And Tatum and Brown are these guys who are, everybody calls them superstars. They're really not. They don't pass the ball enough. There's not enough ball movement with that team. Marcus Smart, you know what you're going to get out of him. And they got no size, so I wouldn't even be scared about playing at Boston. I think Philly this year, they need if they play Boston, they need to just take care of Boston once and for all, right?
Yep, that would be.
I don't know if they can even match up, but
yeah.
you know what I'm saying. But
no, they could.
I'm not
4-5 right now.
To do anything at all?
Yeah, they're 4-5 right now. If they beat Atlanta and then Philly won, they'd get round 2. And Boston would have a tough time defending Joel Embiid, I would imagine. They got no size.
He should average 35 points a game and play every night. He should get 35 and 20. He should.
Oh, boy.
Against Robert Williams and all those guys.
I look forward to these playoffs because last week we had some cool matchups. The standings have jumbled a bit, but we had Brooklyn, New York last week. They were matched up in round 1. You had Philly, Boston matched up in round 1. You had Bucks, Heat in round 1. But now the East is so jumbled. Those things keep moving, but those were some good ones. It should be interesting to see how Brooklyn puts this all together. And, of course, the NBA playoffs start. Well, I hope
I don't know
you're right.
if they can. We'll see. Meanwhile, the Knicks, the Knicks are going to make the playoffs, and there's more buzz in New York about the Knicks than the Nets.
I'm glad you brought this up because somebody texted in earlier asking me if Doc Rivers should be Coach of the Year, and I said you got to say Monty Williams, you got to go Quinn Snyder, and I said Thibodeau.
Thibodeau's going to look. He's done a really good job. We all know he's got what kind of talent do you want to call it? It ain't first-rate talent. He's got a bunch of guys who, they're playing hard. They play. But you knew that you were going to do that. That's the deal with Tom. You knew that they were going to play hard all the time, not necessarily play well. The talent was going to catch up with them at points. And their big problem in a lot of games is they can't close games because they just don't have them. Yeah. They don't have the talent to do it. But he would be in consideration. I don't know if he'll get it, but he'll probably be, third, fourth down there. You always have to go with guys who are, to me, coaching the top teams.
Who's got more buzz up there?
And the guys you mentioned.
Who's got more buzz up there, Nets or Knicks?
I'm telling you, the Knicks are the bigger story up here. The Nets are a big story because nobody ever plays. The Knicks are a huge story because the Knicks fan has finally seen that, if you hire a competent guy who knows what he's doing, especially in the East with this type of roster, you can maybe make, sixth place. We'll see where they finish, seventh, who knows. And this is the first time they'll be in the playoffs since 2013. So there's been the whole last 20, 25 years for the Knicks has been really 20 years, has been a disaster. So, yeah, Tom Thibodeau is a guy who'll probably put up a statue for him.
Mitch Lawrence at Mitch_Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio here on the Sports Bash as the NBA playoffs start to shape up. We're in the final stretch run, about 20, a little less than 20 games left for these teams before we get to the playoffs. Mitch, it's great to catch up, pal.
Mike, always a pleasure.
Always
Don't
good.
be a stranger.
I will not. We will be
All
talking
right.
again soon. Mitch Lawrence from SiriusXM NBA Radio, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.